I recognize myself for 5 minutes now. Undersecretary Colby, I want to thank you for your leadership in delivering this national defense strategy that puts the interests of the American people and the security of American warfighters first. Under President Trump, we have already witnessed this strategy's peace through strength goals and actions with decisive victories in Operations Midnight Hammer, Absolute Resolve, and Epic Fury. These are simply unprecedented victories for our country. Under this national defense strategy, there remains no doubt that the critical interest of America and its allies will be defended, and our military will be prepared to fight and win if necessary. I want to ask you a real quick question. You and I have talked about this a little bit before. It's a kind of a little different pathway here. But the NDS identifies the department's priorities in Africa as preventing Islamic terrorists from using regional safe havens to strike the U.S. homeland while empowering allies and partners to lead efforts against other terrorist groups. Secretary Colby, I appreciated this recent opportunity that you and I had with your team to visit and talk about the department's counterterrorism efforts in Africa, particularly given the worsening environment due to violent extremist organizations such as JNMI, ISIS affiliates, and Boko Haram. I remain concerned about the persistent intelligence and operational coverage challenges in key regions such as the Sahel and the Lake Chad area. Effective operations like the December strikes against ISIS militants in Nigeria depend on reliable intelligence, sufficient force posture, and critical operational enablers. Secretary Colby, what is the department doing to ensure intelligence, force posture, and partner support in Africa are sufficient to keep pace with the growing terrorist threat and execute these NDS objectives?
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thanks to you and to Congressman Moore and others for your leadership on this important issue. And obviously, we've been active. The department has been active over the last couple months on this important issue in line with the President's authorities. I think we've got a great combatant commander, General Anderson, out there, and a great team in OSW. I'll have to get back to you on the specifics. It may need to be in a classified format in terms of intelligence coverage, but it is something we talk about a lot to make sure that we've got the global requirements, obviously for the priority kind of high-end challenges, but also to be able to use consistent with the discussion of the defense strategy to support presidential objectives and otherwise in theaters like Africa.
That's great, and I will get back with you on that because I do not want to take our eye off the ball there. And in that same vein, and you kind of alluded to it here, but the strategic competition with China is often discussed in the Indo-Pacific, but Africa is also becoming an increasingly important area of influence. China and Russia, of course, have been increasingly militarizing the continent, expanding their economic, diplomatic, and security footprint and seeking basing for strategic assets that could threaten our homeland at some point. In the context of near-peer conflict with China in particular, how does the NDS approach Africa as a vital supporting theater, and are we aggressively doing everything we can to undermine the efforts of our great power competitors to prepare for war with the U.S. executed from the continent of Africa?
Well, thank you, sir. And, obviously we are using the military operations, especially against some of these terrorist threats. In fact, there are, rising concern that Africa may be a base for that. So we're keeping our eye on the ball. Obviously, we got to always keep our eye on the CT ball. But and this relates to some of the conversation I had with Mr. Smith yesterday and some of the discussion also in the Western Hemisphere where non-military parts of our national power are going to be extremely important. And we're looking at burden sharing not only with European allies and partners that have traditionally played a role. I had a conversation with the European Minister of Defense in Munich about this, but also in the Middle East and in Africa itself. I think there's a lot to do where we can kind of build up. We don't have to be the dominant figure in every initiative. We want people to take the initiative and address not only security threats, but obviously the things that matter often very much to Africans and others, to development and so forth.
Thank you. Under President Trump's leadership, the Department of War has returned its focus to putting America first, ensuring our warfighters have the capabilities necessary to fight and win, and advancing peace through strength. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the brave men and women of our joint force who, without their leadership, execution of the strategies discussed today would not be possible. And I thank you for your time. And with that, Mr. Crow, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Colby. I'll start with some very simple ones. You're the senior policy official within the Pentagon.